This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good Erev Shabbos Rabbi. Welcome everyone to our Shiur on Shiur Tefilla, sponsored by Rabbi Rose of Los Angeles, Leonishmas, his brother Tzvi ben Levi Yitzchak, Shamash Avin Aliyah, Shemel Tzil for his home mishpacha. So, I want to mention, Shiurim are available on TorahAnytime.com, on Shas Illuminated, on podcasts, on all venues. The easiest way to find everything is on our new website, rabbidg.com. And please check out a number of new venues for the upcoming week. Bez Hashem, Sunday morning, there's going to be a shiur in Muncie. There's going to be a special shiur for ladies on Tuesday. On Wednesday, besides the regular Wednesday shiurim, there's going to be a shiur for Yeshiva Toras Chaim in Miami. And I believe other interesting things happening as well. So, welcome everyone. Today's shiur is an amazing subject. We continue on in Psukei Zimra, which we learned last week, that Mishnah Berurah says one should say Psukei Zimra slowly, as if they're counting money. And we're now up to the beginning of Psukei Zimra, which the Mechaber says, Oimrim Baruch Sha'amar Koidem Psukei Zimra Yishtabach Lachrem. Before Psukei Zimra, you say Baruch Sha'amar, and then you say Yishtabach afterwards. Now, Baruch Sha'amar is a very mysterious tefillah, and the reason it's so mysterious is because we don't know where it comes from. So what do you mean we don't know where it comes from? It comes from the Siddur. That type of thinking, it ain't going to get you anywhere. There's a lot of stuff in the Siddur. By the way, if you notice, the Siddurim that were published last year have like 30 more pages than the Siddurim published 50 years ago. Where did all this stuff come from? The answer is it's all the stuff that people like to say or want to say. So what you find in your Siddur is not the barometer as to the correctness of what is included. The Siddur is the most popular sefer in Klal Yisrael. In fact, the Shlach HaKadosh, very smartly, when he came to Eretz Yisrael, he wanted to publish a sefer on the Siddur because he knew that the Siddur has the widest circulation. Now, Baruch Sha'amar is really a fascinating subject, and the Tefillah Baruch Sha'amar, it's very hard to know where it came from. The Magen Avram says, Kasav de Kavanos, it says in the Kavanos of the Arizal, the mutter la'anois amen achar Baruch Sha'amar, that after Baruch Sha'amar you could answer amen. Meaning it's not a hefsek. Even though you're in the middle of a bracha, you're between Baruch Sha'amar and Yishtabach, nevertheless you're allowed to answer amen. Why? Says the Magen Avram, nearly, it would seem to me that afilu be'emtza bracha mutter la'anois amen. My opinion is you could even answer amen in the middle of Baruch Sha'amar itself. You know why? Kivan shalai huskara be'gemara, because Baruch Sha'amar is not found in Shas. There is no mention of Baruch Sha'amar in Shas, and therefore its age-old status is not there. It does not have the same halachik status as a regular bracha because we don't find it in Shas, and therefore you could even answer amen in the middle of it. Comes the Pri Chadash, Reb Chizkiyahu di Silva, who's buried at the foot of Har HaZeisim, quite close to the Arachaim HaKadosh. And the Chida writes about the Pri Chadash, very interesting tidbit, that the Pri Chadash was offered the most prestigious Rabbanos of the time, namely to be the Rav in Amsterdam. However, they told him, listen, Pri Chadash, we're going to pay you a big salary. Just one thing over here. Only thing you need to agree to is, we do our thing and you do your thing. You can't tell us what to do. But you'll have the job, you'll sit up front, and you'll look good up there. And the Pri Chadash says, if I cannot be Maichiach the Tzibur, then what's the tachlis of the position? And the Pri Chadash gave it up. Says the Chida, it is to the eternal credit of the Pri Chadash that he did not take a job in where he would be limited in his ability to be Maichiach. Anyway, the Pri Chadash says like this. Oimrim Baruch she'amar tmihani. I wonder. Me'achar she'nistam v'nechtam haTalmud. After Shas was sealed and closed, Eich yachlu ha'ga'onim l'sakin brachos mechudashos. How do the ga'onim have a right to make new brachos? Meaning the Pri Chadash is of the opinion that who enacted Baruch she'amar, the ga'onim, and he says, what right do they have to do so? They have no right to do so. We know there's a concept in halacha of chasimas hashas, and once the shas was sealed, ein lahaisif, ein lagroya. So how could the ga'onim, says the Pri Chadash, add the bracha of Baruch she'amar, but shas is sealed and it's the shop is closed? Ume'atema ala rosh. It's a wonder on the rosh. She tama gabe berchas pidyon aben uvekan hoida lahem nami. I understand the rosh is matmiya, where the bracha of pidyon aben came from. That's not mentioned in Shas, but when it comes to Baruch she'amar, the Rosh seems to concede that it's authoritative. Why is it an authoritative bracha? It's not authoritative. That is the question of the Pri Chadash. That Baruch she'amar has no basis in Shas, and he doesn't know who is entitled to enact it. Let's look in the Rif. The Rif says, "V'garsinam per kol kisei hakodesh amar Rabbi Yosi, yehei chelki im goimrei halal b'chol yom." My share should be with those that complete Hallel every day. Eini, but that's not so. Anyone who says Hallel daily is considered a blasphemer. So it's a question. Did Rabbi Yossi want to be among those who complete Hallel daily, or do we follow that which it says, that someone who says Hallel when a open miracle did not transpire is blaspheming? Says the Gemara, Ki ka amrinan v'psuke de zimra amrinan. When I said that I want to be among those who finish Hallel every day, what I meant was psuke de zimra. Now I want to share with you something very interesting. Saying psuke de zimra is like completing Tehillim every day. How's that? Because you're saying the last 5 prakim of Tehillim. Right? You're saying parak kuf mem vav, kuf mem zayin, kuf mem ches, kuf mem tes, and kuf nun. And then you say Baruch Hashem li'olam, Amen ve'amen. Baruch Hashem mitzion shalom shraim hallelujah. Baruch Hashem kvod li'olam v'malich v'edes kol haaretz, Amen ve'amen. Those 3 psukim are the final psukim of some of the books of Tehillim. By saying the Hallelujahs and saying Baruch Hashem li'olam, Amen ve'amen, you are deemed completing Hallel Tehillim every day. Now, what is psuke de zimra? Mitihilo leDavid ad kol Hashem v'talaka. V'takinu rabbanon lemeimar, the rabbis enacted to say bracha mikamayu ubracha mibasrayu, a blessing before and a blessing after. Umayniu, what is the blessing that the rabbis enacted? Now the Rif doesn't say who the rabbis are. Who are these rabbis? Is the Vada Rabbanon of Queens, the Vada Rabbanon of the 5 towns, the chief rabbinate of Belgium? Who are the rabbis that enacted the bracha? The Rif doesn't say. What are they? Baruch she'amar v'yishtabach. Hilkach mi boi leila inish. Therefore, a person is required d'loi la'ashtuye michimaschel v'baruch she'amar ad mesayim shmoneseh. Therefore, a person has to be careful not to speak from the time they start Baruch she'amar until yishtabach, until the end of shmoneseh. So the Rif says the rabbis enacted Baruch she'amar. The Rif does not tell us who the rabbis are. Comes the Rambam. Now the Rif was very early. The Rif was from the earliest of the Rishonim. The Rambam says, "V'shibchu chachamim l'mishakares mirais misefer tehillim b'chol yom v'yom." The rabbis praised anyone who says prayers from Tehillim every day, from Tehillah LeDavid until the end of the Sefer. Ukvar noagu likros psukim l'fnei lachem. The minhag is to say psukim before and after. But tikinu bracha l'fnei azmiros. They enacted a blessing before. V'hu baruch she'amar bracha lachem v'hu yishtabach. And then Birchas Kriyashma. Again, we don't know exactly who made these blessings. Look in the Chida. The Chida and the Machzik Bracha. Umiyu leBirchas Baruch She'amar. Regarding Baruch She'amar, Kfar Kosavti beBirkei Yosef Tehi Mizman Hatanoim. Wow. Says the holy Chida, not like the Pri Chadash that Baruch She'amar was in the times of the Gaonim. Rabbi say, you know who the Gaonim are? The Gaonim are the period of sages that lived after the closing of the Talmud. After the closing of the Talmud, you have Rabbanon Savaroi, followed by the Gaonim. The opinion of the Chida is that Baruch She'amar was not composed by the Gaonim. It was composed even before the Rabbanon Savaroi. It was composed even before the Amoraim. It was already composed by the Tanoim. Now, the Tanoim were very close to the times of Anshe Knesset HaGdolah. And this is brought in the Zayar, and in the Heichalois, and in the Yushalmi. Listen carefully. The Yushalmi says, if you talk between Yishtabach and Yoitzer, you can't fight in the Israeli army. V'hi bracha da'achar psuk de zimra. Now, Yishtabach is after psuk de zimra. Well, if the Yushalmi mentions the blessing after, you don't think there's a blessing before. V'kiven de niskara bracha shari psuk de zimra v'adekana bracha lefneim. There's certainly a bracha before. V'hi Baruch She'amar. The Tanan parak ba simen kol atan bracha lefneim. V'hi Baruch She'amar. The Tanan parak ba simen kol atan bracha la'achar v'tan bracha lefanav. I mean, there's got to be a bracha before. We know there's a rule. Whenever there's a bracha after, there's a bracha before. V'kasavti sham da'arav Pri Chadash chazar boy. The Pri Chadash wondered, how could Gaonim establish a bracha? How could Gaonim establish a bracha after the Chasimas HaTalmud? Oh, says the Chida, I know that the Pri Chadash retracted. Now I want to share something with you. We already had a bracha that the Gaonim were masakin. And that's the bracha of Hanoisin Layoiv Kayach. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility that there's a blessing that was enacted by Gaonim. That is certainly possible. But here what we're learning is that, in the opinion of the Chida, this was not from the Gaonim, but rather this was actually from the Tanoim. Now the language of our Yushalmi is anyone who talks between Yishtabach and Yoitzer has to return from the army. However, the Avudraham has a different gersa of the Yushalmi. The Avudraham says, V'omer b'medrish, miho'ish hayore v'rach alevav. Who is frightened? Hamedaber, zeh hamedaber mibar she'amar hatzoif hatfila. You know who's someone who should be frightened, who cannot fight in a Jewish army? Here it doesn't say someone who talks after Yishtabach, but it explicitly makes mention of Baruch She'amar. Namely, it says anyone who speaks from Baruch She'amar until the end of davening has to return. And then the Avudraham quotes the Yushalmi that yes, Yushalmi says Yishtabach and Yoitzer, but this Medrash quoted by the Avudraham explicitly does say Baruch She'amar. In fact, if you look at one of the Rishonim, the Sefer HaEshgael, he says, Psukim elu layu zazim mipicha. You should always be familiar with the above mentioned Psukim. U'paischin beBaruch She'amar. You begin with Baruch She'amar shehu brachas hahalel. That's the bracha of the Halal Psukim de Zimra. The Psukim de Zimra Matilo David al Konishama Nikra Halal. Kedamar Rabbi Yosi Chalkim Garmei Halal. The Tiknu Chachamim bracha betchila v'soif kamai b'kriyas halal hamitzri. The same way they made a bracha before and after halal, they made a bracha before and after Psukei de Zimra. Now I'll share with you something amazing. If someone is in the middle of Psukei de Zimra and the tzibur is up to halal on Rosh Chodesh, then you don't make a bracha on Hallel. Because the bracha of Hallel is only a minhag. And it's questionable whether it should be made. So if you're in the middle of Psukei Zimra and the tzibur is up to Hallel, you rely on Baruch She'amar as the bracha before your Hallel, and you rely on Yishtabach as the bracha after your Hallel. Now, by the way, interestingly, the Sefer Eshkol ends off that Baruch She'amar has in it 10 times Baruch, Keneged the Asar Ma'amorah Shenivra Ha'ilam. Let us progress. In Eliyahu Zuta, it's brought V'chein haya hadavar ma'kadosh Baruch Hu v'Yisrael. Shenamar lech reid ki shiches amcha uksiv ad shehamelech b'mesibai ad shehamelech b'mesibai nirdi nasan rechai. While the king was at his party, we gave off an odor. Look at the lashon of this ancient medrash. Baruch sha'amar v'haya ha'olam baruch hu. Blessed is he who spoke, and the world came to being. Blessed is he. Baruch oisa masa bereshis. Blessed is he who makes the works of creation. Baruch oimer v'oisa. Blessed is the one who speaks and does. Baruch goizer makayim. Blessed is the one who decrees and fulfills. Baruch shezachar es harishonos v'hever es achronos. Blessed is he who remembers the early generations and forgets later happenings. Shahaya loymar. The pasuk should have said, Nirdi nasan sirchain. It should have criticized us much more acutely that we gave off a foul smell instead of loymar nasan reichai, instead of just gave off a fragrance. But here we have in an ancient medrash a very, very similar language to our tefillah of Baruch Sha'amar. Now the Torah says, Baruch Sha'amar tzach la'omrei benigon. When you say Baruch Sha'amar, you need to say it with a tune, uveneima, and with a sweet melody. Now we know on Shabbos in Psukei de Zimra, many people get up to daven Psukei de Zimra for the Amud, but they don't know that Psukei de Zimra has a nusach like the rest of tefillah of Shabbos. Baruch Sha'amar v'haya ha'olam baruch hu. Baruch ha'iseh b'reishis. Baruch ha'omer v'yoseh. Baruch ha'ozer m'kayim. Baruch melech mehulaha b'tishbachayis. So, if you say, I don't know that tune, no problem. I'm sure there's someone in the shul who knows it. You can let them daven. But you should learn the tune. There is a nusach for Psukei de Zimra of Shabbos, but the Torah is not only talking about Shabbos. There's a nigun for Psukei de Zimra during the weekday as well. Melech mehula bat tishbachais. It has some tune to it. It has some nigun to it. It has some melody. Anyway, especially Baruch Sha'amar. And the Torah says, V'kasav b'sefer heichalais. It's written in the book of heichalais. Now, what is the book of Heichalais? Let me see if you could see my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, we got your screen.
Let's see if they have Sefer Heichalais. If you could take a look. Heichalais. You have Sefer Heichalais with the Parish of the Gra.
We don't see that. We only see the document, the PDF document that you had shared.
Oh, okay. The Sefer Heichalais is an ancient Kabbalistic work. Let's see if there's any information on this edition. The Sefer Heichalais is from none other than the Tana Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol. Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol was not a Rabbanan Savaroi, he was not a Goin, he was not an Amoira, he was a Tana. Now, let me try something here. Are you able to see, what do you have now? What do you see on your screen?
Very small document to scan.
Okay, let me try something here. Let me try. Do you see the Marmakaimais?
No. Yes, no. No.
No, huh? Okay. Now you just see me. Now let's try one more thing. Okay, we're going to try one more thing. Sorry, quickly. Now, do you see it?
Now I'm a Kabbalis now.
Okay, good. Here we go. Okay, now, so the Tur says that this Sefer comes from, this Tefilla comes from Sefer Hechalois. Now, Sefer Hechalois is from the Tana Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol. And not only that, it has 87 words. And the remez, Roishoi, the beginning of Psukei de Zimra, Kesem Paz, a ornament of Paz, of ruby, but Paz is 87 words. V'cheinu nusach Ashkenazim. This is the nusach of the Ashkenazim. So, we've basically been able to establish that there are very early sources to Baruch She'amar, not like the Pri Chadash says that it was from the Gaonim, but instead it is sourced in the Sefer Hechalois. In fact, the Chida brings in the Tzipora and Shamir. Shevach Baruch She'amar Ram V'Nisa is very lofty. V'gavoya ma'od v'tzarch la'amrei b'nusach shel pei zayin tevois. You need to say it in a text with a text of 87 words. V'lo yishtane b'shum zman. Never change it. Baal Toisif, you're not add, or Baal Tigra, don't take away. V'makal yoimru nusach acha. And if you're in a tzibur that has a different nusach, hu yoimer b'tzina. You quietly say the correct version of Ayin Zayin Tevos. Ki yesh boi soidos amukim. It has very deep secrets. So we're going to be spending this year and definitely the next year on the origins of Baruch She'amar, because we still don't know who wrote it. We just seem to know around when it was written. Let's see the tshuva of Shaus Tshuvas Mishkanos Yaakov. Tshuva, Hinei Apri Chodesh Tama b'ma she'omer Baruch She'amar da Maimer me'achar shenechta menistam Talmud. How could the Gaonim be masakin it? And the Mishkanos Yaakov says, I wonder on the Pri Chadash that when he read the Rif, that the Rif says the Rabbanan were masakin and bracha before, the Pri Chadash understood the Rif to mean Takanas Hagaonim. Says the Mishkanos Yaakov, it's obvious that's not true. When it says V'Rabbanan doesn't mean the Gaonim. V'Rabbanan means the Tanoim. The Evshir V'Karov Takanas Anshik Nazgala could be, it was even close to the Tanz Anshik Nazgala. Why? Because the Pri Chadash himself brings from the Yerushalmi that if you talk between Yishtabach and Yoitzer, you gotta leave the war front. So that means clearly there's a Yerushalmi that there's a bracha after. And the Zohar says in Parshas Truma, the Anshin Hazom Sakein, Sidurei de Tushbachtan de David. The Zohar says that the Anshin Zagdo were Masakein Psukei de Zimra. And in Vayakel, the Zohar says, in the Slaveta version, Tikuna tinyana betikuna de kiyuma b'hai alma ba'oivda de bereshis lebracha l'kutchabricha kol oivada b'alei kaima kiyuma de ha'alma v'al derech baruch b'baruch she'amar baruch al kula. It seems from the Zohar that Baruch She'amar was established by Anshe Knesset Hagdoila to hold up the world. V'chein mavur b'divrei Sefer Hechalois. The Sefer Hechalois also is mavur this. That the Anshe Knesset Hagdoila are masakin it. Al pi piska, based on a document. So sort of I left out the most interesting part so far of who exactly enacted Baruch She'amar, but one thing is, it's from the Sefer Hechalois. How could the Pri Chadash have made that mistake to actually think that it was from the Gaonim? Even though Rabbi Yossi says, I want my chelek to be from those who complete Hallel every day, which implies not everybody said it. Right, Rabbi Yossi says, I want to be among those who say Hallel every day. That implies not everybody said it. So I would say, yeah, because the more things change, the more they say the same. The reason not everybody said it is people used to come late then, the same way people come late today. Haloi k'moi kain, ein makom loimar, yehichal k'mi gomer shalosh sudos. Says the Mishkanos Yaakov, the fact that Rabbi Yossi says, I wish to complete Psukei de Zimra every day does not mean that it wasn't enacted then, because he also says, I wish to eat shalashudas every Shabbos. And that shalashudas is a chiyuv. How do we know it's a chiyuv? Because many people say, I'm not hungry for shalashudas, or I'll just eat mezainos. That's how we know that it's a chiyuv. Otherwise, the Yetzer Hara would not be so convincing of getting people not to be yotzi shalashudas. It's amazing how people eat all day long, 7 days a week, except for shalashudas time. All of a sudden, people are not hungry anymore. You ever hear that? You ever offer somebody food? Oh, I'm not hungry. No, it never happens, except for shalashudas. All of a sudden, there's this mysterious fullness that kicks in shalashudas time. Oh, I don't want to wash. Why don't they want to wash? Because the Yetzer Hara says, the Gemara says, anyone who eats shalashudas will be saved from Gehenna. So the Yetzer Hara doesn't want anybody to be saved from Gehenna. So he makes you full. By the way, I guarantee you, it's the easiest thing you'll ever do to be saved from that hot place. But anyway, says the Mishkanas Yaakov, Rak lefisha ena kol zehirim bahen. The reason why Rabbi Yossi says he wants to finish Psukei Zimra every day is not everyone is careful to, and the schar is very great. So therefore, he said, I would like to be able to finish it daily. And in the Zohar HaKadosh, in many places, we find the great tikkun of Psukei Zimra, and it is a fundamental aspect of Tefillah. Says the Mishkanos Yaakov, Lanias Daiti, from the Rambam, it's also mashma that Baruch Sha'amar is me'ikarei Tefillah. Because the Rambam says when they were masakein Tefillos, they were masakein a bracha after, every day. Even also these brachas, Baruch Sha'amar v'yishtavach. And the Rambam says they were masakein it before Zmiros and after. The Rambam is mashma, this is all from the takanos of the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah. Because the Rambam says, when the rabbis were masakein the tefillos, they were masakein the bracha after and the bracha before. This seems like this is all part of the takanos of Anshe Knesset Hagdolah. Furthermore, when the Rambam writes the cheshbon of meir brachas every day, he considers 18 brachas of Shmoneh Esrei. And then he says, and nowadays they made brachas haminim. So, we have 5 extra brachas. Now think about it. The cheshbon of 100 brachas is from the Tanoim, Harishonim, before they made V'la Malshinim, before they made Hatoy V'Ameitiv. So the Rambam, before, even though he doesn't count V'la Malshinim, and he doesn't count Hatoy V'Ameitiv, he still counts Baruch Sha'amar. So what do we see from the Rambam? That Baruch Sha'amar preceded V'la Malshinim and preceded Hatoy V'Ameitiv. V'afil hach yachnas v'cheshem Baruch Sha'amar v'yishtavach K'mat shekoz v'akoch she'im ta'konos Anshe Knesset Hagdolah v'zu raya midivei Rambam zal. That's an amazing raya. Go look in the Rambam's cheshbon of 105 brachas. It doesn't count V'la Malshinim, it doesn't count Hatoy V'Ameitiv, and it does count Baruch Sha'amar. Uve'emes kosher b'einei l'cham asher pasek ha'mechaber v'shulchan aruch. It is a pella to me that the Mechaber says if you enter shul and the tzibur began to say Yoitzer and you don't have time to say Psukei Zimra, even by skipping, that first you daven with the tzibur and then you say Psukei Zimra without Baruch Sha'amar Nishtabach. You hear what the Mechaber paskins? Now we don't do that. But the Mechaber paskins, if you come late to shul, start with the Berchos Kriyashma and afterwards say Psukei Zimra without Baruch Sha'amar Nishtabach. The kasha minaleha, how do we know this? Rabbeinu Yoina doesn't say this. Rabbeinu Yoina holds you're allowed to say Psukei Zimra after davening, even with its brachos. And even according to him, he writes that even though it's a mitzvah to say it before Shmoneh Esrei, but we'll have to delay it in the face of Tefillah B'tzibur. Now, the Mishkanos Yaakov takes issue with the inability to say Baruch Sha'amar and Yishtabach after the davening. But in his opinion, it is clear from the Rambam, and it is clear from other poskim, that, in fact, Baruch Sha'amar is not from the Goinim, is not from the Amoraim. It appears in the Sefer HaCholos from the Tanoim, and according to the Rambam, it even preceded B'lam Hashinim and Hatov Amitiv. Now, who exactly composed it? We're going to see an incredible thing, Be'ez Hashem, next week. And on that note, I'm going to wish everyone a wonderful Shabbos, and see you next time. Okay, thanks everybody. Kol Tov.
Stay dry and stay healthy.
Bracha v'atzlacha. Shkoyach. Thank you.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.